Good morning. Whoa, okay. It's good to see each and every one of you this morning. We're going to go ahead and start getting our Bible class started. I know it's a little bit different. You know, we go to different classes, but we're all here this morning. But we do want to introduce our brother, Chad Landman, who's been with us this weekend. And so Chad is going to give us quite a few lessons today in regard to digital parenting specifically, but also in a very surface level and barely scratching the surface, as he's going to mention several times, in regard to our duty and responsibility and how we can intentionally use technology in connection to our faith and so on. And so Chad is the education minister at the Graymere Church of Christ in Columbia, Tennessee. And so he and his wife, Bonnie, have 3 boys. And so Chad has dedicated a lot of time to technology, but also he is in the battlefield of rearing children as well. So he is very passionate about this topic, but also very committed to raising godly children. And so I'm excited. I've been excited this whole year and before that for Chad to be here, but I'm more so excited today that he's here with us. And so without further ado, we're going to let Chad have the floor with us.
Thank you very much, Danley, and I appreciate so much the invite to come this weekend. And Danley was kind enough to take me to Mission Control and fulfill a bucket list item for me. I'm a huge space program fan. I grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, so I was already dialed in, and it was absolutely wonderful. So appreciate his hospitality and his family's hospitality this weekend. And I'm looking forward to today. We're going to have 4 different discussions today, 4 different talks. I'm going to speak right now, obviously, on this is what would customarily be our first, if I was doing a 3-session workshop, this would be the first of those 3 sessions. And so you're getting the full first session here. And so this is kind of do I need to turn this mic on? Is this mic on right here that I've got on my, the Garth Brooks mic? Is it on? I call it the Garth Brooks mic, not the Britney Spears mic. Garth did it first, so. Talk is loud because it's going to be a long day for my voice. I'll tell you that much right now. I do want to encourage you. This is a workshop that I've done. This is number 102. And no joke that I have had, you are number 102. You barely missed 100 by just 2 sessions. But I cannot believe that I've done this 102 times. And so when we look at this, and I want to make sure to tell you to stick around, and I'm going to say it again in the sermon today, but stick around and make sure you're back at 4 p.m. We have a set of questions that you have submitted that are going to be incredible. Some questions I've never actually addressed before, and I'm looking forward so much to talking about them. We're going to talk about some tough subjects, but things like AI, when is the best time for your child to get a phone, all sorts of different stuff, okay? So I want to encourage you to be back at 4 p.m. this afternoon as well, if you can. And then we'll have our 5 p.m. session, which will actually be talking about settings, devices, all sorts of different kind of technical stuff, but at the same time, it's not really all that technical, and so it's absolutely wonderful. So anyway, we'll get started here. How many of you have seen the movie Vegas Vacation? Vegas Vacation. It's not as popular as Christmas Vacation. I know Christmas Vacation comes on every holiday and everything. But in Vegas Vacation, they are doing a tour of the Hoover Dam. And they're underneath the Hoover Dam. And this wall is supposed to be sweating. It's supposed to be leaking a little bit. Well, Chevy Chase's character is, comical and everything. And he thinks it'll be funny. And he wants to get a piece of gum that he's chewing and put it in the hole. And he puts it in the hole and it clogs the hole. And he's very proud of himself for just a second. He says, oh, this is nice. This is nice. And then 2 more leaks pop out. It's like something from a cartoon. And he calls his daughter over, and they chew some gum really quickly, and they're plugging these holes, and then more holes are popping out. Every time they plug one hole, 2 or 3 pop out, and eventually the whole wall has all of these, all these things spraying everywhere, water spraying everywhere, and basically they just kind of throw up their hands and walk away and hope nobody saw it, right? Can I tell you, parents, and I know that you know this, but that's how parenting feels sometimes. You just nail one problem. I've got 3 boys, right? Seems like there's a problem every day. And you nail that one problem. And then 3, 4 more just crop up in its place, right? It can feel like you're in a sinking boat with holes in it sometimes. And if you've been parents or if you're grandparents, if you've raised kids and they're out of the house now, you completely understand what I'm talking about. And so when I say that digital parenting, it's called the Digital Parenting Workshop, but it's really about how we parent. It's the attitude and the mindset that we have behind this technology that is so very important. The technology itself is just a tool. The technology itself can be controlled, and that's what we're going to talk about. It's the theme of the day today. I want to invite you to turn in your Bibles to Psalm 127. Psalm 127, if you would. We're going to be looking at that first verse in just a second. This is a parenting issue as much as it is a technology issue. In fact, it's more so a parenting issue because there is no substitute for your good, godly parenting. And I know you've heard this from the pulpit. I know you've heard it from classes. I know you've heard it read it in books, that it's so very important. But can I tell you that it's so very important for us to understand that this is not a technology issue. Now, can we blame the technology? Yeah. Can we point out the things that are going wrong in technology and the things that are addicting us in technology? Yes, we absolutely can. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But at the same time, 95% of the battle is what you do at home. 95% of the battle is your parenting, your grandparenting at home and in other places as well, okay? And so I've asked this question ever since in the very first, there's almost nothing similar to the first digital parenting workshop I did 12 years ago in this presentation today because it's all changed, it's all different. But this is one thing that has not changed. Now I ask parents, very soundly, very non-combatively, do you know what your children are doing? Do you know what they're doing? If you allow your kids to have devices, if you allow them to be on social networks, if they're at that age and above or whatever, do you know what they're doing on their phones, on their iPads? And if you don't know what they're doing, my question to you is, why don't you know what they're doing? You know where they're at in a physical space, right? We're very, very concerned about when our kids go to a physical place or go to this person's house or go to this concert or go to when they're at school, when they're not at school. We're very concerned about their physical location and their physical safety, but we need to be obviously concerned about their spiritual safety. And that translates to directly what they're seeing on a screen these days. Our kids are growing up in a generation, in a way, in a digital lifestyle that we never knew. If you're over 30 in this crowd today, then your kids are growing up. My kids, ages 13, 11, and 8, are growing up in a completely different world. I'll talk a little bit about that during the sermon. But we remember what it was like a little bit, don't we? When something came on television, you had to watch it then. You might be able to record it on a videotape, a VCR or whatever like that, but you had to watch it then. Things have changed so much with our technology. And so when I think about all of this, I've always thought about Psalm 127:1, and this is a classic example of plucking a scripture out of context, so I apologize to all the theologians in the crowd, but this is one of those kinds of things where I think about this scripture all the time when it comes to raising kids. Raising kids, figuring out what's really important. Psalm 127:1, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Have you ever wasted your time doing something because you didn't read the instructions? Yeah, men, just all raise your hand. You're guilty, right? I wanted to build this little shelf for our Tuesday, we called our Tuesday, Thursday school. Do you know what days of the week they meet? But They wanted a shelf. They wanted a little shoe shelf that they could put all the little pairs of shoes in. And I thought, I can build that. I got my dad's tools. I can do stuff like that. I'm handy, right? Although I'm not handy. If it has a screen or a microchip in it, then I'm pretty handy. But with a set of wood and tools, I'm not incredibly handy. And when I got done with this thing, after several hours of toiling away at it, it was kind of slanted. It's not supposed to be like that. And I wasted that time building this little infernal shelf because I didn't read the instructions. I didn't make it square. I didn't make sure that I was doing it the correct way. And so what this scripture says to me, that says, unless the Lord, unless God, unless Jesus and his Son are, or unless Jesus the Son are the centerpiece of what we're trying to do, unless they are the absolute core of what we're trying to do in our homes, then what are we building? What are we building? You are building, even though if you have kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old, you're building their future homes. They are going to be products of their environment. They're going to parent like you. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Because I think about that every day. The things that I say, the ways that I teach, the ways that my wife and I interact with our boys. We're building their future homes. So when we think about this idea of unless the Lord builds the house, unless the Lord is the centerpiece, unless he is part of everything that we do, what are we doing? Are we just wasting our time? Yeah. So again, coupled with that, we have to make sure that when we think about our parenting today, that we're thinking about these things right here. If you allow your kids to be on one of these devices, if you allow that to happen, then you are going to be responsible for what your kids see on those devices. Because you are their protectors. You're not their friends. I need people to tell me that from time to time, that my boys are not my friends. They're my kids. They're my children. And I'm their protector. So I need to be reminded of that as much as you do sometimes. We are responsible for their spiritual upbringing. It's a serious responsibility. And again, just a reminder for you, not that you've forgotten that, but one of those things that we need to make sure that we think about. So, a couple of things we need to realize. And again, this usually sets the stage for the other two sessions. We will be doing the question and answer session in place of our social media session, which is great. It's going to be phenomenal. So 4 p.m. today, make sure you're there. But a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about in the sermon is going to be really parallel to a lot of this kind of stuff today. So the first thing that we need to realize is that technology moves fast. And I think we realize that. So do your kids. Okay? I love this quote by Albert Mohler. He actually wrote this quote around the time I started the workshop, and I thought it was so good. So it was true in 2014, and it's absolutely still true today, 11, 12 years later. He says, the digital age is upon us. In the span of less than 3 decades, we have redefined the way that humans, what's the list here say? Communicate, entertain, inform, research, create, and that last one, did you see that last one up there? Connect. That's a very important one. And what we know now is only a hint of what is to come. Now, I find that quote both fantastic, but also a little scary at the same time. I'm getting to the age, I'm in my 40s. I don't know if you remember what it was like to be in your 40s, and I don't know if you are in your 40s right now, but you get pretty cranky about just about everything in your 40s. And I'm sitting here looking at my kids who want a headset, a screen that is 2 inches in front of their eyes, and I go, I'm the nerd and I'm the technology wizard, and I'm like, why would you want that? Why? Why would you want that? It seems silly. It's not silly, by the way. I took a thing of Machu Picchu, and I was walking in Machu Picchu. It was the greatest thing ever. Anyway, when we think about that last one, connect. Remember what technology used to be like? Now, everybody under the age of 30 in here, under the age of about 25 in here, you probably don't identify with these objects very much, but Huntsville's phone book was a booster seat is what it was. I remember climbing up to the top of the fridge and then like opening the thing like this to, okay, Chinese restaurant, like we had to look stuff up like that. We didn't have phones and computers to just pop on the internet and do that. I was talking to a group of kids about the phone booth. I was talking to my 8-year-old, and I said, you know what this is? And he goes, yeah, it's where Superman changes. I was like, yeah, this is changing room. No. Do you know what it is? No, I don't know. What is it? What is it? He didn't have any idea what it was. And so you think about stuff like America Online and that computer in the middle right there. Remember, the internet was a physical place you had to go to? You had to go to the library to check your email. You weren't watching videos or anything online. You were lucky that you were going to get to see a picture in one of your emails, right? And it was so slow. But we loved it. Now, we've become more interconnected than ever before. If you think about your kids, and this is wild because this number keeps getting bigger as I keep doing the workshop. But if your kids are college age and below, they have never known the world without Facebook, Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called this week, Instagram, things like YouTube, Netflix. They do not compute. They do not understand what it was like in what my child calls the 1990s, the olden days, is what he calls them. And I take a direct resentment to that. I'm like, it was not the olden days. But then I look and I go, well, it was 30 some odd years ago. It probably is the olden days. And for some of us who grew up even older, we grew up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. That seems like ancient times in computer age, right? So our kids, I'm trying to illustrate to you, are growing up in a completely different world. And guess what that brings us as parents and as grandparents? A whole new set of challenges. Parenting has always been difficult in any age. Just ask Adam and Eve, right? Parenting has always been difficult. But when you pair it with this technology that we have in our hands, the ability to pull up my phone and really see anything that I want to at any time at the drop of a hat. That's powerful. But it's also very risky when you put it into the hands of a child. I'm going to really emphasize that today. We have to remember that these children are what first? They're children. They are not little adults. I don't care if they look like adults. I don't care if they're 14, 15 years old and they're as tall as you. My 13-year-old is as tall as me. That's weird. But he is not an adult. He does not have the decades of experience that I have. He does not have the decades of making mistakes behind him, right? Doesn't have that experience to draw on. So we have to make sure that we remember that. We've always been distracted too. We got to thinking, about, I hear people all the time, kids on these phones these days. Well, I think I've got this picture and then that picture. Yeah, I took this golden picture on a mission trip one time. The average age at this table is like 72. Every single one of them on their phones. They did not pose for this. I turned around and I said, and I literally grabbed my phone and took a picture. It affects us all. And so before we start pointing our fingers at all the teenagers and all say, they're always on their phones. Yeah, they are. Guess what? They're growing up in a different way than you did, but we're all addicted to this. So what are we going to do about it? That's really the question today is, what are we going to do about all this stuff? I think, again, and the next thing that we need to realize is we can never use the excuse that we didn't know, okay? Just had tax season. Anybody an accountant in here? Anybody a CPA? Okay, good. I didn't want to offend anybody. No, I'm just kidding. The minister taxes are really weird. I don't know if they're the same in Texas that they are in Tennessee. There's quarterly payments. There's all sorts of different stuff that happens and everything. In my first year in ministry, I was actually in the state of Virginia, and my tax attorney or tax guy comes up and he says, hey, so yeah, it's like a week before taxes are due. He's like, you owe about $4,400. And I said, what? Excuse me? I've been married for 8 months. I don't have $44, right? What are you talking about? Well, it turns out there was a whole lot of stuff that was required of me to do that I didn't do. I was just la-di-da-di-da, this is fine. I'm not paying, I'm getting a great paycheck. I'm not paying tax. And it was just a disaster, right? And it was because I wasn't paying attention and I didn't do what I needed to do. And so How sympathetic do you think the IRS was when I called them? Did they say, oh, Mr. Lamon, you just didn't know. You're good. We'll zero out your balance. Do you think that happened? No. We'll be happy to set up a payment plan for you, Mr. Landman. Please put your drop of blood here, give us your firstborn son, all this other different stuff, right? Because we didn't know something about this technology is not going to be an excuse. I cannot tell you how many parents I have heard that said, well, I didn't know. Well, I didn't know that app could do that. I didn't know she was talking to him or he was talking to her. I didn't know that they had access to that. I didn't know that they were following him or her. How do you not know? It's your job to know, right? You're the parent. You're the protector. So again, this is just to hopefully encourage and energize you to say, it is your literal job to know what your kids are doing on these devices, period. And hopefully I'm going to give you a lot of tools and a lot of strategies for that today, especially, and again, in that last session at 5 p.m. today, especially in that session, you're going to learn about all sorts of different stuff that you may have not heard of before, okay? So again, we have to make sure, we have to realize, and we can't just say, well, I didn't know like I did with my taxes. Well, I didn't know I owed that kind of money. We can't say that about technology. We're not going to be able to say that. I think about these verses a lot. Matthew 18, Proverbs 29. Matthew 18 is very interesting. Because in Matthew 18, let me see if I can pull it up here. Yeah, here we go. Matthew 18, it's very interesting because the disciples approach Jesus and they've already started off on the wrong foot. They've got the wrong idea already. They come to Jesus and they say, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? This is in verse 1 of chapter 18. And Jesus, instead of berating them, instead of being like, look, James, dude, you've got the wrong idea about this, brother. Instead of saying that, what does he do? He pulls a child to him. And he says, truly, I say to you, in verse 3, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Oh, what a great master storyteller, Jesus, right? Master illustrator. He's so good at just pricking your heart, right? But then we read that section of Scripture, we tend to skip over the next, don't we? What does it say in verse 5? Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to tie a great millstone fastened around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Whoa. Jesus was pretty extreme in a lot of things he said. In the Sermon on the Mount, he takes the most extreme stance of every phrase in the Beatitudes. It's the most extreme that he could take to illustrate his point that it is an extreme way of living. You have to have extreme righteousness to be able to serve me. And so when he says, if you cause a little one to sin, you might as well tie a concrete block around your neck and be thrown out here outside of Galveston in the ocean, right? That's what you should do to yourself because you're causing someone to sin. And I think this is a special message to us as parents. We are at ground zero thinking about these kids, and we cannot be the weak link in the chain that causes them to stumble, right? Proverbs 29:15, I'm running out of time here. The rod and reproof give wisdom, right? We read that first phrase and we think, yes, discipline, right? We need to have that discipline in our life. We need to be disciplinary with our children when we have to be, right? But it says in that second part of that verse, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Interesting. Some of us would make the excuse and say, well, I don't know about those apps. I don't know about TikTok. I don't know about Instagram. I don't know about technology. I don't know anything about that. But I'm going to allow my kids to be on it? You need to think about that. You need to be where your children are. You need to be there monitoring, watching, just like you would in a physical way. You need to be there and monitoring. Let's keep moving. A couple of really really sobering statistics. And again, this session may feel like I'm just kicking you down while you're down already, right? But the encouraging part will be the rest of the day. So this is designed to build on the rest of the day. But there's some sobering statistics here. 1.9 billion plus sites on the internet. That's just in 2022. That's out of date by 3 years, right? So over 2 billion, at least, sites on the internet. 68 million of those are dedicated to nudity or pornography, okay? So nudity and pornography is the low-hanging fruit. We can always point that out and say, oh, that's the worst thing that our kids can get into. Is it? Think about it. When we think about this right here, these are numbers blow your mind, right? This is the number that we need to be concerned with. 1 in 5 searches on a mobile device are for pornography or some form of that, right? It's very interesting. Adolescents, a lot of smart people here, quotes. Adolescents who view pornography feel shame, diminished self-confidence, and sexual uncertainty. I don't think we want our young men and our young women feeling more sexually uncertain than they probably already are that society is telling them that they should be, right? We don't need that. So why are we going to allow them to possibly be lawless on these devices? We can't allow that. Significant relationship that exists between social media use at too early of an age and feelings of loneliness, including major depression in adolescence. There has been a link, especially in the last 6 to 7 years, of parents who let their kids be on social media in 6th grade versus parents who introduced that much later in 10th or 11th grade. And the difference is astounding. I'm going to talk about the book in our question and answer session. I'm going to talk about the book, The Anxious Generation. If you have not read that book, run, don't walk, because it is incredibly essential that if you have kids at all, or grandkids, that you read that book. It is showing us what has happened just since 2009, since the advent of the modern smartphone and the advent of these new and these addicting apps, of what impact that's having on our children. It's not having an impact on us adults. For the most part, we adults, we know when to stop scrolling. You might argue that, but for the most part, we have that self-control. Kids don't have that self-control. Or at least most of them don't, not yet. And so we have to be looking at these things and how they're impacting not only the addicting nature of it, but what the content of what they're actually seeing and watching and learning. We're going to talk a lot about AI this afternoon and what kind of effect that's going to have on us in the future, in the church, what kind of effect that could have on us in the short term, but also in the long term. So I invite you to be back again this afternoon. Donna Hughes says that parents are the weak link in the chain when it comes to protecting their children. We can't afford to be that weak link. We can let somebody else be the weak link, but we as parents on ground zero cannot afford to be that weak link. Does that shock you a little bit? It's a little surprising to me, but I've found that the last few years of doing this workshop that when I used to show the statistic and I would hear gasps. Now I don't hear anything. Because people are just like, yeah, that's normal. We're going to talk a little bit about that too, about the desensitization that we've had because of this technology. The average exposure to internet pornography or nudity on a screen is 8 years old. I have an 8-year-old. That hits home. We think about this, 94% of children ages 8 to 18 have seen nudity on their screens, most while doing homework. Why is that most while doing homework? Well, if you have two parents in the house that are both working, they don't get home till 4:35, 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m. Your kids get off the bus at 3:30. You want them to do their homework, right? You don't want to have them doing their homework at 9 p.m. So they're doing their homework, but then they're required to get on their Chromebook and write this thing, and then they get distracted because they're kids. Like we would say, well, why did you look at this stuff? Because they're a kid. Think about the decisions that you made when you were 13 years old and 17 years old, right? There's a reason why Genesis 42 begins with, and Joseph being 17 years old. The author, Moses, is telling him, hey, Joseph's about to make a bunch of dumb decisions here because he's 17 years old, right? You don't make smart decisions necessarily when you are a teenager. We have to assist and help and protect our kids when they are going through this stage in their lives. We cannot expect them to make great decisions 100% of the time. That's what we're there to teach them for. 87% of sexual solicitations now happen in chat apps. And when I say chat apps, I don't just mean Snapchat. I mean any app that has a private messaging function, which is basically all of them these days. Instagram, Twitter, X, Facebook, PlayStation. There's messaging platforms on PlayStation and Xbox. You're absolutely right. Thank you for mentioning that. So yeah, it can happen. And in some ways, you have to go through every single one of those accounts that you let your children be on, and you have to make sure that those things are locked down. Most of these companies have figured out that parents want decent parental controls. Most of the companies that we are going to talk about today have decent parental controls. But do you know the percentage of parents that actually use those parental controls? It's less than 10%. So again, take advantage of the tools that you have at your disposal. Do the research, do the work. It's like, I know, it's like another full-time job. I get it. 3 boys, I get it. So at the same time, we have to make sure that that's a priority. 67%, nearly 7 out of 10, boys and girls, they admit to clearing their browser history or search history in order to hide internet usage from their parents. This could be a search history of an app download or a YouTube video watched. You have to be watching. Again, because kids are going to be kids. That's not to excuse their behavior. That's not to say, well, they're just being kids. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have to understand as adults that they're not adults, that they're kids. They're going to make mistakes. This is interesting right here because just since March of 2020, social media use combined with depressive symptom levels in teens ages 14 to 22 are up 18%. Anybody in the psychology field in here? Anybody? Okay. Sometimes I have some people that are able to give some insight on this, but there has been a large spike. The average percentage increase per year used to be 2 to 3%, but since the smartphone, that has been climbing every single year. When we think about this, this is affecting our children profoundly. How many of you have middle schoolers in here, in your house, or you have a middle school grandchild, okay? All right. I will say, and again, as I've said before, your middle schooler, your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grader does not need to be on any form of social media, period. I cannot, you know what? I'm going to say it louder so that you get this. They do not need to be on any form. The studies have shown that giving a kid a TikTok or a Snapchat in 7th or 8th grade is much different than doing it when they're in 10th or 11th grade. Your brain chemistry is totally different from 7th grade to 9th or 10th grade. They're totally different, and there has been so many studies about this, and there's a group on Facebook if you want to find them. It's called Wait Until 8th. They encourage you to just wait until 8th grade to give a phone, to let your kid be on social media, and then when you let them be on social media, don't throw them into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Let them wade ankle deep in the water. Let them be on one thing at a time, 1 or 2 little networks with their friends, right? Don't shield them either. We can't go the complete opposite direction and say, well, my kid's never going to be on social media. He's never going to have a phone. I think about my middle child who is the exact same person as me, which if you'd have told me that 11 years ago, that child, my David, it's going to be rough. I can tell you that right now. He may not get a phone until he's 30, okay? I'm joking, but I'm kind of not joking because that's one of the major things that we're going to talk about today is when do you give your kid a phone? It has become more for the parent's convenience for the child to have a phone than it has been for the child to actually get a phone at the right time. There's plenty of alternatives. Give them a flip phone. They're not going to be embarrassed to use it because they'll never pull it out in front of their friends. They'll go behind a wall or something and call you, right? That's what they'll do. So you don't have to worry about it. They can play Snake on it, and that's it. Remember that? See, I got some chuckles. Everybody knows what, if you're over 35, you know what that means, okay? So, your middle schooler does not need to be on any form of social media. Let me ask you, do you agree or disagree with that? Okay? Because sometimes I feel like I'm shouting into the void and that nobody's hearing anything. This has been proven. I'm not just saying this to say this. This has been proven. And I'm not trying to tout this, but my 13-year-old is on the autism spectrum. He doesn't have a phone yet, doesn't have any kind of social media. He does, however, have his own device. He has very limited access. He does animation stuff. He watches Minnow Kids and doesn't have YouTube, doesn't have Safari, doesn't have any of that stuff. You can make these devices really pretty locked down. You can make them a texting and phone machine if you wanted to. You could go to the AT&T or Verizon store and find, they always have new old stock that they're ready to give to you, a 2-year-old brand new iPhone that they're ready to sell you, and you can just make it a texting and phone machine if you really need to get in communication with your kids. So it can be done, okay? So when we think about that, we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Third, we need to realize privacy is an illusion. I've got until 9:45, Stanley? Thereabouts? Okay. So we got to go. We got to move. Privacy is an illusion. Now, I can talk about this for forever. I will just say this. Tech companies don't care about your family. Google, Apple, Facebook, Meta, whatever it is, TikTok, they don't care about your family. They don't care about your family's well-being. What do they care about? They care about being in the black. They care about making money for their shareholders. That's what they care about. So just know that tech companies do not care about your family. They do not care about your well-being whatsoever. And they may say that they do. They don't. They don't. And I think about Hebrews 4:13 a lot. Hebrews 4:13 says this, no creature is hidden from his sight. Talking about God. No creature is hidden from God's sight, but all are what? Naked and exposed to the eyes of him whom we must give an account. I tell this to kids and teenagers all the time, and I might as well tell adults as well. Even if you can hide what you're doing on these devices, if you can hide it from your spouse, your friends, your school, your ball team, your place of work, your church, your coworkers, even if you could hide it from the government. Nobody can hide it from the government, but if you could hide it from all those things and all those entities of people, who could you still not hide it from? The Lord God himself. And we are going to be held accountable for what? Not only what we have done on these devices with our thumbs and these little tiny keyboards, we're going to be held accountable to what we say on these screens just as much as if we were shouting it on the town square. We have to help our kids realize that. And that's a bigger deal than I'm making out of it, because kids have this thing of, well, what happens on the phone, it's not real life. But it is. And it's going to affect your mental stability, your spirituality, your worldview, everything it's going to affect. So we have to be thinking about those things. I talk to kids sometimes and I say there's a bucket of feathers. If you take a bucket of feathers out on a windy day, what's going to happen? Those feathers are going to go everywhere. You're never going to get them back. You put something out on the internet, it is out there, period. It might as well be set in stone. I can't tell you how many, I can tell you a couple of dads have, I had one particular dad come to me and put his finger in my chest, and he had tears running down his face. He said, you're going to help me get those pictures of my daughter back. And I'm like, oof, that's not how the internet works. That's terrible. That's rough. So again, we have to make sure that they're taught the right way so that those things don't happen. What can you do? I'm not going to give you all these doom and gloom things and not tell you some things that you can't do. And also, because I'm a preacher, I got to have a proper acronym for stuff. I'm a preacher, teacher, but also a Marine. So I've got to have acronyms for stuff. Does that make sense? So I came up with SPEED, okay? Make a list of devices in your home that access the internet. By the way, all of these slides are at digitalparentingworkshop.com. You don't have to take pictures or notes, but you can, and they're all at digitalparentingworkshop.com. There's no ads on there. You don't have to sign up for anything. Just go and download these to your heart's content. But start. Make a list of devices in your home. You cannot know what you're dealing with unless you know what you have. And so get a legal pad out, put a line right down the middle, name every device in your house, even that refrigerator that has internet access. I don't know why you would have a refrigerator that has internet access, but they have them, so you might have one. So you need to make sure that you put down everything that has internet access on there, and then on that right column put what kind of parental controls you have enabled on that device. You may find that you need a lot less devices in your house real quick. Plan. I bet you, and I'm willing to put money on it today, that you have retirement plans, you have college plans, you have all these things set up. You're planning for maybe home renovations, bathroom renovations, the next hot water heater you got to buy, all these different things, right? We make all sorts of plans. How about we make plans for our children's digital development? How about we think through those things and sit down for half an hour with our spouse and map out those things? They're going to change because kids change. And it's going to be different for every child. And by the way, I wish somebody would have told me that if I'd have had 3 boys, that they were all going to be different people. I thought they were going to be little carbon copies of one another and be the same exact person. They're so different. It's weird. But that means that you have to tailor a specific plan for them. And so I've got a starter form on the website. On the website, digitalparenting.com/resources, that you can download the digital parenting plan. You can just try to map all that stuff out. It's just to get you started, okay? The next thing, and I'm racing through these because we're out of time, but I'd say enforce the strict rules when you really have to. That is what really it comes down to, is we make these rules and we say, this is how it's going to be, and we sit our kids down, and we have the family meeting, and this is how it's going to be, and then we don't enforce them. And if kids know that you're not going to enforce the rules, they know psychologically, well, I can break those rules anytime I want. I can do what I want. So you have to be an enforcer as well. That's not fun at all. I know it's not. But you have to do it. And then really encourage. You know, I encourage kids whenever I talk to them in teen classes and things, I encourage them to just disconnect sometimes. It's okay. It's okay to not be connected constantly. Not be on your phone constantly. What I've heard from kids here recently in the last few years is, I don't want the pressure. They tell me that they said, I don't want the pressure of having to be on it all the time. I wish my parents would give me an excuse to be off my phone sometimes. And I think that's really interesting and telling that kids would say those things. So again, give your kids opportunities to leave their screen behind. Notifications are huge. Turn off all of your notifications. Turn them off. And I mean it. I have notifications on for 2 apps. Do you know what those are? No, not even calendar. I don't need to know. I can look at my calendar. Phone, texting, that's it. So if somebody calls me or if somebody texts me, and then on the iPhone, I know you can do this on Android as well, you can even further tailor that down to say only certain times of the day do these people get to text me or call me. So you can further push it down. It's called focus modes. Look it up. It's amazing stuff. You can make this phone do what you want it to. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about that this afternoon. Control your technology so it doesn't control you. Do it. Make this technology work for you, okay? Bell's ringing. We're out of time, but we're almost to the end here. The last one, obviously, is demand. And I think as parents in your homes, as grandparents, that we need to constantly be demanding holiness from our kids. We need to be demanding holiness from our spouses. We need to be demanding holiness from their grandparents. And we need to read 1 Peter 2:9 every single day. And we need to tell our kids, we are that royal priesthood. We are that holy nation. We are God's own possession. Okay? Tell them how special that they are. I think that's important. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Again, this is like the first of 3 sessions that I would do in a digital parenting workshop. I'm going to have a little bit something different for the sermon today. And then I hope and pray that you will be back at 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. today to hear those sessions. I think you will get a tremendous amount of information from those. Thank you again. And if you have any questions for me, I'd love to talk to you. Thank y'all so very much.